Okay, so thank you for that kind introduction, Dr. Ivan, and it's a pleasure for me to be here and present my experience with this on this topic of conducting unproctored exams, right? So one thing the pandemic has taught us is, not to, hold back and wait for a new situation to arise. We got to update ourselves from a technological perspective and be ready for any kind of situation in the future, right? If we have to offer exams unproctored, or if we have to conduct classes fully online, if we have to conduct labs online, it's a good idea for us to sort of get ourselves equipped on these ideas right away and not wait for something to hit us. And we saw in this pandemic that it took all the universities a couple of months to actually get back on their feet, even with respect to teaching. Okay, so the idea is, though this topic might be relevant to the pandemic era, I think it still has a lot of value, and you can improvise on this even post pandemic. Okay, so with that brief introduction, like Dr. Ivan said, I'm faculty in Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Madras. I work in the Integrated Circuits and Systems group, so I'm essentially a circuit design faculty, and the courses I teach are related to that. So with that brief introduction, let me get into the presentation for today. So this is the agenda. I'll in order to appreciate some of these ideas, you also need to understand the kind of course that I offered, right? Because I understand that every idea is not amenable to every course. Okay, so I'll give you a background of the course, then I'll give you a background of when the pandemic hit us, what had to be done, how we reacted, right? And what led me to sort of to devise this kind of an examination mode, right? Then I'll also talk about my modified grading system, because this is very important. In the pandemic, it was not advisable to go with the same old grading system that we had earlier, okay, in terms of number of quizzes, exams, and all that, right? And then I'll talk about the student feedback. Then I'll get into the details of the exam design. I'll show you some small examples, okay? Then I'll detail out some nitty-gritties of the implementation on Moodle. And finally, I'll show you some results by way of student feedback and the performance of the students on the exam that I conduct. So jumping straight in, the course. What is the course? The course that I teach is called Digital IC Design. Okay, it's a digital circuit design at a transistor level. And I've just listed out the learning objectives of the course here. A student should be able to characterize the key delay quantities of a standard cell, evaluate power, design a circuit, right? Identify critical paths. So you can see that, this is a very hardcore circuit design course, and the learning objectives are closely tied to transistor level design of circuits. Okay. For now, I'll just leave it as, transistor level circuit design is the lowest level of abstraction, okay, that we can deal with, right? Logic gates is a higher level of abstraction. Transistor circuit is a lowest level of abstraction. And below that is only the fabrication part, right? So just to give you a background and the setting of this course. So what does this course typically do? We first discuss the transistor in great detail, okay? The NMOS characteristics, PMOS characteristics, right? The MOS is metal oxide semiconductor, N is N channel, and P is P channel. Then we move on to the inverter, right? This is a logic gate that students know already when they come into this course. This is a 5,000 level course, and in a 2,000 level course, they do what is known as digital logic design, where they are already familiar with the idea of an inverter, NAND gate, AND gate, and so on. But here, like I said, we do it at the transistor level, right? And this is the inverter is dealt with in great detail. Then we move on to combinational circuits, like I said, from the inverter to the NAND gate. Then we talk about how to size gates in order to meet a timing specification. Then we move on to the sequential circuit design. Okay, so here is where we deal with latches, flip-flops, timing analysis, right? And finally, we do what is known as the data path design, which is basically adders and multipliers. So in short, this course tells a student how to build a key component of the arithmetic and logical unit of a computer, of a microprocessor, right? How do you pipeline it? How do you speed it up? How do you design it for certain functionality and so on? This is the background, right? Now, with this in mind, you will then be able to appreciate why I have decided to follow the grading scheme that I've shown here. Okay, the assignments, right, are about 10%, right? And these are lab assignments. Okay, then there is a quiz one, which is 15% of the total grade. Quiz 2, 15%, end semester is 40%. Now, quiz 1, quiz 2, and end semester exam are, they form 70% of the grade, final grade, and they are all pen and paper exams that were done in the pre-pandemic era. And that's what I'm showing you here, saying July, November between 2017 and 19, I offered this course thrice. And in 2019, the number of students in my class were 130, right? So this is a very popular course in the sense that anyone who wants to take up a job in the VLSI domain has to do this course, right? So therefore, there are a lot of registrants and there's a lot of demand for this course. There is also a course project, which is about 20% of the final grade, right? So if you look at it, 10 assignments and project are sort of related to each other. They are essentially, the assignments lead to the project. Okay, so they are lab assignments that the students do, and eventually they finish with the project together. That forms 30% of the final grade. This is what I had in 2019. Now, a little bit of the background, right? So in March of 2020, the pandemic struck India, right? I guess it hit Australia a little later, but in March of 2020, we went into a complete lockdown. So the picture that you see on the left is a picture of one of the main roads, right, in India, which is completely deserted, barring a couple of police vehicles there, right? So people were just locked indoors, staying at home. In April 2020, it took some time for the people and teachers and everybody to figure out that they can no longer use the blackboard. Okay, the blackboard is a thing of the past, and there's no way that any teaching can proceed if you depended entirely on the blackboard and offline teaching mechanisms, right? And in May 2020, IIT Madras sort of got into action and then told their faculty that it's time that you plan your online teaching methods and modes, because we need to get going with our teaching. The classes cannot be held up because of the pandemic, right? So I am part of the Teaching Learning Center in IIT Madras, and the mandate of which was to sort of disseminate knowledge of this kind to all our own faculty and as well as faculty across other institutes. So we conduct faculty development programs where we discuss teaching pedagogy, we discuss technology, we discuss various ideas like what I'm doing today, and we share these ideas with teachers around. And with all this infrastructure in place, by about May or June, at IIT Madras, teaching was sort of back in full swing, but in the online mode, right? Now, that was very good, okay? And what about the exams, right? In between January and April of 2020, or January and May actually, which got extended until June because there was a lockdown for 2 months in between. I was teaching a course which had just about 20 or 22 students. Now, this is very easy to handle. You just give take-home exams and you conduct vivas, right? There's absolutely no problem in this because students can take their own time. There's nothing like a take-home exam, right? There is no pressure. The questions will be hard, but students have sufficient time to attempt them, and we can verify if they have done their job or not through a detailed viva. Now, what about large classes? Okay, and in the July November 2020, again I had to teach the same course, digital IC design, which had 130 students. Typically has 130 students, and now that it was online, I was not even limited by the classroom capacity, the number of students that can be seated in a classroom, because it is online, and therefore that number simply went up from 130 to 170, right? So anything greater than 30-40 students, this viva take home exam becomes a problem, right? And if it's above 100, then it's definitely an issue. So when we were faced with such a problem, there are different issues that we had to think about. Okay, uh, especially many of these things we take for granted in the offline mode, but they become a problem in the online mode. Okay, so the timing of the exam, whether it's a level playing field for everybody, whether it's a how do you grade, technology access, integrity, and the effort from both student and faculty side, right? These are things we take for granted in a classroom exam, because it's just, all the students are provided a nice comfortable classroom, right? They are all given equal access to their resources, and the question paper is the same, or maybe as one or two variants might be there depending on the number of students, but effectively the difficulty level of the question paper is the same. The timing of the exam is decided, it's immediately after the course ends that you take your exams. The effort from students and faculty is minimum, because students study, they just come to the classroom, take the exam. Faculty have to set one question paper, which is very easy to do, right? And anyone who has taught a course multiple times will realize that this can be done in a matter of 2 days, right? And integrity again is not an issue, because students are seated in a classroom, you can have proper proctoring, people walking around, and there's no question of technology access, right? Because typically a scientific calculator is more than enough to ensure that our question papers can be solved. Unfortunately, none of these things are true when you move to the online mode of exams. So timing. Now, one question that a lot of faculty and a lot of my colleagues, including right from the director level to the deans and HODs, had is, can we conduct the exams when the students return to campus, right? People were, at that point speculating that, the pandemic might be over in 2 months, in 3 months, 6 months, students will be back by December of 2020. Well, that was just it was not even a dream. It was something way more than that, right? And very soon, many of us realized that you cannot be waiting for such things, right? Now, the other option, right, in India especially, right, we have companies that conduct exams for us in various locations. So we have two national level entrance exams. One is JEE, right, joint entrance exam, and other is GATE, right? And there's also one more exam called NEET, right? And these exams are conducted pan India, all over India, in various cities. So we have the infrastructure to actually employ some organization like this TCS that conducts these exams, and they will help us conduct exams anywhere in any nook and corner of India, right? So this was one of the questions that we had, right? However, with a strict lockdown and the unknown, and the, just the level of ignorance that we had with respect to COVID, right? It was clearly not a safe option to ask a student to step out of their house, okay? And I'll come to the student feedback, which indicated the same later as well, okay? Now, next question. When you conduct exams online, right? Typically, people are aware that you can randomize questions in Moodle, right? And Moodle is a sort of a platform where you can classroom management, exam management platform, where you can host your exams and content and material. Students and teachers can log in and access all of them, right? So there is an option on Moodle to randomize exams. Now, the issue is If you randomize such a question paper and each student gets his or own version of the question paper, is this a level playing field? For example, let's say that I randomize the questions in such a way that one student gets all the questions from topic 1, but another student gets all questions from topics 2 and 3. Well, clearly this is not a level playing field, right? So the at least the distribution of questions across topics should be uniform. Only then is it a fair exam and a level playing field for all the students. Okay, just to sort of reiterate, in my offline exam, if I did give a question paper which was skewed towards one topic, right? For example, if I just gave all my questions from topic 1, it is still a level playing field. It may be a bad question paper, but it's still a level playing field because all the students are getting the same question paper, right? Even that breaks down when we start randomizing questions on Moodle, and therefore we have to be careful about this issue as well. Next, do we ask students to write the paper, the answers in pen and paper, right? And do we ask them to scan and send that answer sheet to us, or do we ask students to take the exam on Moodle? Now the problem here is these are students are at home, right? And they need to send us a answer sheet. Well, the answer can be modified even after the exam. How do we ensure that? Therefore, it is very essential to have a timestamp of the answers that they have entered. It's not necessary that you have to go by that answer alone or grade the student based on just that answer. But it is very essential to have a timestamp of when that answer was entered, and it should be within that time frame that has been allotted for the exam, right? Otherwise, there is some malpractice that you need to at least uh, investigate. Okay, so therefore here the answer was quite obvious to me. It had to be done on Moodle, where the timestamp of the answer is automatically recorded. Whether you do auto grading or not, that's a different question, right? Though I chose to do it, I chose to do the auto grading by Moodle. I will come to those details a little later, but at least I chose to record all the answers and the details of the answers using Moodle. Now, technology access. This is something that we had to worry about. Do all students have access to good internet connection? Well, it turns out that most of them had access, but a very small fraction, and I'll show you what that fraction is. I have data for this. It's a very small fraction that does not have access to good internet connections. Now, some of my colleagues decided to do what is known as camera proctoring, right? So you ask the student to be, take the exam on a laptop, and through their mobile, you ask them to connect and keep the camera on all through the exam. The issue with this is, for those who have a very poor internet connection, that this camera can be a huge disturbance because it consumes bandwidth. Then you could have frequent dropouts, call dropouts. That means the student, every time the camera disconnects, the student has to panic and reconnect immediately, because otherwise the student is afraid that it will be construed as malpractice, right? So just think about the pressure of a student who's sitting in some remote village with a bad internet connection. This can be a lot of pressure on them, and therefore, to me, camera proctoring was not an option. Of course, camera proctoring anyway is not 100% foolproof. It does not guarantee that there's no malpractice. So for that reason also, I said, I'm not going to worry about camera proctoring, right? Then the integrity of the exam, right? Is there any way that you can guarantee integrity of the exam? Because now people are at home, they are free to discuss. You have no control over this, right? You could ask them to, sign some sort of an undertaking that, they are not going to discuss and all that. But if people do, right, then the ones who are honest are put at an undue disadvantage. And this is not fair to them, right? Now, therefore, like I said, there's the randomization and other things that's possible on Moodle. But how many variants of a question paper can you create? Suppose you have 130 students. Typically people, all of us know that creating one question paper takes about 2 days. Imagine if you have to set 130 variants of the question paper, right? You will be spending the entire semester doing that. It's impossible, right? So these are the concerns that need to be addressed if you want to conduct an online unproctored exam. Next, there is, so clearly here, on one side, there is effort from the student that is required, right? Either they have to leave home and go take an exam in a nearby exam center, right? Or they have to deal with a poor internet connection, they need to do something. On the other side, there is the faculty effort in, creating question papers that can maintain the integrity of these exams and so on, right? Now, what is the sweet spot? We need to find the sweet spot, right? uh, Point is very simple. The COVID was so serious, especially in March of 2020, that it was just not advisable to ask students to leave their home, right? And therefore, uh, the safest option was to simply eliminate that, right, and allow students to take it from home. The effort on the faculty has to go up because they have to create variants, many variants of a question paper, but that's okay. At least it's a safe option, right? So with that, right, let me then tell you, what is the uh, modified grading scheme, right? Because like I said, I showed you a grading scheme earlier about, assignments, quiz 1, quiz 2, end semester exam, project, right? Now I have already highlighted to you that, conducting an exam itself is a nightmare for a large class, right? Therefore it was not advisable that I went with the same grading scheme at all. So the idea is to ensure students learn. Now that can be achieved in multiple ways. So on the left, on the blackboard, you see the old pre-pandemic grading scheme: assignments 10%, quiz 1, quiz 2 15%, end semester 40, project 20%. On the right hand side is a Wacom tablet, which all of us had to switch to, and the grading scheme was modified. The number of students in my class this time was 137. In the following year, it went up to 170, by the way. Okay. So then I increased assignments from 10% to 20%. I removed the idea of quiz 1 and quiz 2, essentially because already I don't know how to conduct an exam. So therefore, I made it a weekly quiz, which is an open quiz. Students can discuss, students can learn, but that is 20%, right? 20%, I have no problem if the students discuss among themselves and answer. As long as they learn, I'm okay, right? As long as I'm able to expose gaps in their understanding, I'm still okay. If a student chooses to be dishonest here, he or she will pay the price later in the end semester exam for not having understood the concepts properly. So I have a deterrent there, and I'm going to leave that 20% open. Let them discuss, let them learn, no issue. The end semester exam, instead of 40%, I made it 30%. But this is the only exam that I had, only real exam, right? Which had to be conducted uh, in that semester, right? Then there was a course project, which from 20% I made it 30%, right? So clearly, this redistribution of marks, first of all, allows me, some time to figure out a method, right? Because the semester started in about September, and the exam was due in January of 2021, right? So I have a couple of months to devise and come up with a mode of conducting this exam. I need to think about how to do it, right? So, and this, continuous assessment only allowed the students to learn better. And as an aside, I have decided to persist with this new grading scheme even after returning to campus now. Even in the regular semester that I'm teaching now, I'm teaching the same course, I continue to follow this new pandemic grading scheme because it simply worked very well. Okay. Student feedback, right? So I decided to, once I realized there were 130 students, I said in my first month itself, I said I need to get some feedback on various aspects, right? So I asked the students, I said, can you please tell me how your internet connectivity is? Okay. what you see here is, totally there are about 137 students. On the x-axis, the around 80 plus students said their internet connection was good. Less than 30 students said their internet connection was very good, right? And poor or very poor, right? So if you look at on the left hand side, the survey that I took was very poor, I am unable to watch lectures. Poor, I am unable to download the lectures. A fair number of them said their connection was poor, that they're unable to, they're only able to download lectures. That means for these poor and very poor internet connection students, camera proctoring is just not going to work. Their call is going to get dropped every now and then. Okay, in a 3-hour window, if your call drops 5 times, that is a severe panic that is simply not acceptable for the students, right? Next, feedback on the exam mode. So I asked the students saying, do you want to go and take a pen paper exam in your own city? The answer was a resounding no. Okay, this feedback, the students simply said, and one student says, can you please conduct the exam online? Do not ask us to leave our homes, which was very understandable given the severity of COVID at that point. Therefore, the answer was very clear, said conduct the exam online. Exam timing. Now, nothing looked like it was going to reopen in the near future, right? This was evident. Now, let's say hypothetically, right, the institute opens up completely after 2 years, right? Can we conduct all the exams after the students return to campus? So imagine the students who have to write 15 to 20 exams once they return. I mean, they are not going to remember anything. They are going to cram and try to just understand that syllabus, write it. I mean, this is a clear no option for me. Okay, I'll come to more student feedback later about this, but this was a clear no option for me, especially for the BTechs and MTechs in my class who are taking about 4 or 5 courses every semester, right? Which means you had over 4 semesters you would accumulate at least 15 courses, right? Even if you reduce the course load a little bit, right? And the gap is going to be 2 years. This is a meaningless option in my opinion. Okay, so therefore it was very clear I had to conduct the exam immediately after the course. So in summary, what is the feedback summary? Technology access on the left is a clear red, right? Students don't have technology access. I have to conduct it online, but I have to keep in mind that they don't have good internet connectivity, right? Both for camera proctoring and access to Moodle, okay? Then the green, effort. I said, okay, all the effort is going to be mine. I'm going to figure out how to set this question paper and conduct this exam somehow, okay? So the effort from student side was absolutely minimal. Sitting at home, they have to take their exams. Timing, the answer was again very clear. It had to be done immediately after the course. So what remains to be seen is, how do I now set a question paper which can maintain integrity, is a level playing field for all the students in spite of randomization, grading, and etc. Right? Randomization and all that, and grading, right? I want to do it on Moodle, but do I need the pen and paper sheets as well? All these things I had to figure out, right? And I'll clarify these in the next couple of slides. Okay. So now I'm going to jump into the exam design aspect, right? So what are the exam specifications? The questions that I set should simply render discussion irrelevant. That was my aim, right? Even if they discuss, it should be of no use, right? And that should be the deterrent. Exam should be open book, open Google, open laptop, whatever, right? Let them open whatever they want. They should not be able to benefit from that, right? Exam has to be time bound, right? Because I cannot give an open book exam here because of the number of students, right? Now, internet access should be limited in the sense the exam duration is 3 hours, but I want my internet access time for the student to be less than 10 minutes, right? Let's say 5 questions, 2 minutes per question. That's it. That's all I expect, right? Cannot be pen and paper alone, right? I need a timestamp, like I said, of when they entered the answers. However, I did ask them to upload their answer scripts, handwritten answer scripts, whatever they worked out after the exam was done as an assignment link, so that I can cross check, that they have worked it out correctly. Then most importantly, level playing field, the difficulty level of the question paper should be uniform across the students, right? So here is my idea. Each student should get a unique question, okay? When I say unique question, I mean every question in the paper should be different for every student, okay? So it's not okay, for example, to have 5 variants and randomize across 130 students, because there will be approximately 26 students who get the same question. And this is not robust, because they can easily discuss and get the answers done, right? So can we use parameter randomizer in Moodle? It is usable for simple questions, but it has its limitations. It's not possible for multi-part closed type of questions, okay? And how do you, and more importantly, you can do all this parameter randomization, but how do you verify that every variant is correct? That is the key point. The worst thing to do is to give an incorrect variant to one student, and that student gets derailed because that's simply not solvable. Remember, you cannot solve all the 130 questions and check, okay? That has to be automated. So let me show you an example, right? Consider the following quadratic equation: ax squared plus bx plus c, right? I want to give 2 variants, right? A parameter is 5.6.3, B is 172.2 and 15.28, C is 7.6 and 9.4, right? Now, I want the discriminant to be greater than 0. Now, how do I ensure this in random parameter generation, right? I have to ensure b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0. Now, the answer is very simple. Don't try to do this in Moodle. Move out and do this random parameter generation either in Excel or in MATLAB or whatever you want. Okay. So here is a example that I did, right? The exam parameter generation is shown here, right? Param A, param C, param B. They have been generated, in a particular way, and then I calculate the discriminant. Then I calculate the positive root, negative root, using the minus b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac by 2a, right? So the blue hash params are, my keywords that indicate that it's a parameter that will appear in the question, and hash answer underscore are the answers that need to be reported by the students. Others are all intermediate parameters. Okay. So now, like I said, the most important thing is to ensure that every variant of this answer of this question is correct. Okay. So what I do is, after my answer, I have a couple of columns that actually check for these, that do these sanity checks, like checking the product of roots, checking sum of roots, checking the discriminant is greater than 0. Okay. So I check for all this, and all these columns should be 0. I have coded it like that. Okay, for example, if the discriminant is greater than 0, then put a 0 here, is what I have said in Excel. Okay. Now, therefore, when I take these, couple of parameters like multiple variants, right? Maybe I'll just quickly show you in Excel, right, how that is done. So, can you see my Excel sheet?
Yes, we can see your Excel sheet.
Yeah. So, what I do is, I'm going to simply copy this, okay, and I'm going to paste it some arbitrary number of times. So what you see is, for the param A, param B, from about 12 variants, I have increased it to 115 variants by simply copy pasting, right? And I check here, okay, sum of L2 to L115. This sum should be 0 for all the variants. If even one of them is wrong, this sum will be greater than 0, and that means some variant of that question is wrong, and therefore I need to go check it, right? So this is what I essentially do to generate. And if you look at the advantage in Excel, right, the parameter generation can be done conditionally. Like I generate A and C randomly, and then B is generated to ensure the discriminant is greater than 0, as you can see in the formula here, right? You see this formula here on top. You can see that I'm generating the number very intelligently so that I randomize it. I generate a discriminant which is greater than 0, and then I also check for them, right? So this is what I do, and thereby ensuring that every single variant of my question. So I just take this, one row, copy paste it 130 times or 200 times, and generate 200 variants of that question. Okay. Now, how do I take this to Moodle? Okay. Like I said, parameter generation has been done outside, right? Now, taking it to Moodle, I do it using the Moodle package. There is a Moodle package in LaTeX. Okay. And on the right, I am showing you the question that I have coded. Okay. So you see this hash param A, hash param B, hash param C, hash positive, negative root and all that. And they correspond exactly to the Excel sheet parameters that I've used. Okay. So what I did was I wrote a script that essentially takes these parameters, right? And, I go through all 200 variants from beginning of file to end of file and parse and replace these parameters one by one and generate variants of this. Okay. So when I compile this in Moodle, in LaTeX, apart from giving me a PDF, it will also give me an XML file. That XML can be imported straight into Moodle. If I have time, I will show you that a little later. But taking this, the interface to taking this parameter generation to Moodle is through LaTeX and the Moodle package. Okay. So now that was a very toy example, right? You cannot be asking a quadratic equation. So here is the real question that I asked. Okay. Just look at the question that has been asked. A long channel pseudo NMOS inverter is driving something. What I have highlighted in blue are my parameters. And these numbers are going to be unique for every student. So let us say that two students, they decide to discuss. They see their questions, they discuss their questions among themselves. But what can one student infer from the other student because there are so many parameters? It's not easy to just extrapolate and get an answer based on what one good student has got. In fact, it is impossible. I'll show you the proof for this in the marks later on, right? So there are 6 parameters and number of answers are 4. So here I am saying, what I do is I tell them that you have to enter the answer on Moodle and do it very accurately to an accuracy of 0.5%, right? And so that there is only one way to get the right answer. I'll tell you how to handle cases where students try a different method and get a slightly different answer. I give credit for that also. Okay. Now, coming to the implementation part, right? I sort of have a little time now, so I will quickly go through the implementation part. Yes. So implementation, like I said, can we make discussion irrelevant? Yes. X can share the question with Z. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I skipped a slide. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So here is, a typical progress of, how 3 random students would deal with such an exam. Okay. Let's say I'm giving them 120 minutes. There are 4 questions. Okay. The color coding is yellow is for the first question. Red is for the second question. Blue is for the third. And the beige is for the 4th question, right? The 1, 2, 3 in the yellow represent the variants that I spoke about just now. Okay. So what you see is student X may be very good, may finish all the questions very quickly, right? Within 75 minutes, that student has finished the 4 questions that were given to him or her. Now, student Z is or student Y may be an honest student. It just takes a long time, right? Student takes a long time to do the 4 questions, right? But this is the second variant of each of those questions, and they are different from student 1, right? Student X, and that student takes all the way till 2 hours. Now student Z, let's say student Z is the dishonest one. Let's say question 1, somehow the student has been able to solve, no problem. Question 3, the student tries for a long time and fails to get the answer, right? No, it's question 2, I'm sorry, the red part, right? That's the third variant. Question 2, the student takes from 15 minutes to 45 minutes and is unable to get the answer. Then the student says, okay, let me move on to the blue part, right? The third question, and finishes it reasonably well. Then the brown part, okay? Now the student X has finished at 75 minutes and can technically help student Z, right? And that's why you see student Z coming back to question 2, the red, and question 3, the blue, towards the end. Okay, now I want to prevent this. Okay, so the idea is very simple. I want to say, I'm saying the following: X can share the question and solution with Z, right, as and when done. Okay, so there are two ways that X can help Z. As and when X is done with the question and the solution can be shared with Z, right? But if my question is as complex as I showed here, then it's not going to be possible for Z to figure out what the right answer is, because it's a hard thing to do, because the Z has to get the answer right for his or her parameters, right? On the other hand, X can help Z after completing the exam. Now this is a big problem, because now X can solve Z's question, right? Therefore the idea is, can we time out a question? In the sense I'm saying, can we make the question sequential in nature, right? The idea credit goes to Professor Kalmarkar from my institute, who also gave a talk. I just saw your website some time back, right? He did this idea where in a small class, he manually released question by question to the students, asked them to mail the answer back, and then gave them the next question. Now, my point is, I can't do this manual job for 130 students. How do I automate it, right? So here is the solution. What I did was, on Moodle, I have a validity of the question. Just focus on the bottom 4 rows. Question 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yellow. That yellow bar tells you how long question 1 can be attempted in the exam. So you start at 0, and question 1 can be attempted up to 30 minutes. Question 2, you can start anytime from 0, but it has to end at 60 minutes. Question 3, you allow it to go till 90. Question 4, you allow it to go till 120. So now you think about what student Z will try. Okay, first question yellow, then the second question red, not been able to solve. Third question blue, again not been able to solve. Fourth question the student has been able to solve. Now student X can help student Z after 90 minutes. But that is not possible because Moodle will not accept an answer to that question. Okay, so this is the key idea of the design, and I'll show you how to do this on Moodle as well. Right now, the one problem here is, you still don't want the good student X to remain idle towards the end, right? You want the student to actually be busy. So instead of stopping with 4 questions, you give 5 questions and then take the best 4 out of 5, right? That's the idea. Okay. So what am I doing on Moodle? I am using the idea of activity completion. I'll try to demo this if there is time. And there is something called restrict access based on previous activity completion. Okay. And then later I also say that detailed answer sheets needs to be uploaded after the exam, and the answer should match what is on Moodle exactly. Otherwise I will treat that as an invalid question and simply give 0, right? And the time required. Now the important thing is, because I'm making it sequential, I need to be very careful about how much time I give for each question. So what do? I take each question, and as a instructor who set this question, I know what steps have to be written. I manually write down all those steps. Okay. Then I say 3x of that time is what a regular student would take to solve that question. Right? This is the conventional 3x rule, which you can apply even to regular offline exams. Right? 3 times the amount of time it takes for us to put down all the questions is the time a student will take to solve it. Right? And finally, I double that time. That is the time I set on Moodle, saying this question can be, once you start, the student has to finish in so much time on Moodle. So this is sort of my favorite slide, right? And I hope there is someone from Australia who follows cricket. It so happened that this whole thing of coming up with these scripts and setting this exam happened alongside one of the greatest India-Australia Test series, right? So in Adelaide, when India were bundled out for 36 in the second innings, right? That's when I started developing my scripts around 15th of December. By the time we moved to Melbourne and Rahane won us the match with his spectacular 100, I started setting my questions, right? And in Sydney, when Ravichandran Ashwin and Hanuma Vihari saved the last day for us and saved the test match, I was verifying my questions. And by the time Rishabh Pant hit that lovely boundary to long off and won the historic test match at Brisbane, right? I actually conducted the exam. The key point, I want to make here is not cricket. Of course, that was very thrilling for all the Indians, right? But apart from this developing scripts, the rest of the time remains the same even for the next year. So it takes a long time for you to develop, to come up with questions that can be, have so many variants and to ensure that those variants are all correct, right? So it takes about 2 weeks to set such a question paper with 5 questions. Okay. And then I conducted the exam on 16th of January, I believe. Okay. So now, like I said, what happens, when some student has, in spite of all this, right? In spite of all this, it could happen that some student may have some issue, right? Or may solve the question in a different way and the answer may not match to 0.5%. So what I do is after the exam, I send out an Excel sheet and say, please enter your clarifications. Either you had an internet connection, you could not enter the answer, or you had to, you did it in a different way, your answer matches to 1%, 2%, tell me, right? So then I go through this Excel sheet, right? Student by student, question by question, and I manually overwrite the marks on Moodle, right? And this is where the fact that they have uploaded their detailed answer script comes in handy. I have something to check against to see if they've done it correctly or not. And in cases of doubt, I even call them for a viva. And why is it possible? Because out of 130, only 16 students had such doubts, right? And that's the key thing. And that's how it was a sort of a very robust, successful model. So I'm running out of time, so I'll quickly go through the results. Okay. So here is, in that exam that I conducted on January 16th, right, in 2021, the first question was a relatively easy question, just an application of what has been taught, right? Clearly, you see that a lot of students have got it right. Okay, 72 students have got it right, full marks. Okay, 7.5 is the maximum. Most of them, 72 plus 33, have got at least 5 to 7.5, right? So this clearly shows that if the question is easy, people are going to get it right, right? That means what this also tells me is there was enough time to solve the question and all that, right? Because most of them have got it right. If a lot of people got this question wrong, the easy question wrong, it means my timing was incorrect. Now, here is the difficult question, and this is the proof of the pudding that there was no malpractice and the integrity of the exam was maintained. A difficult question, look at the number of people who got 0. Right? And all 93 people out of 137 got 0. And I went and verified. I did a random sampling of 10 of them and I saw what was the reason. They simply got the concept wrong. Right? Now, if there was malpractice, right, you would have seen a very high number on the full mark side. This 22 would have actually been 93 if there was malpractice. But to me, this clearly indicates there is no malpractice, right? Now, so I asked the students, right, after the exam, I asked them saying, what did you think about the exam? Can you give me some feedback? So I asked them saying, overall, the grading scheme was well adapted to an online course offering. As you can see, the blue, strongly agree and agree are huge, 49 plus 37%, right? Now, the questions were made sequential in nature, right? Now, students had enough time to attempt each question. Now, clearly, you can see a big mix here. It's not like the strongly agree and agree just simply covers. There are a good fraction, about 18, 19% that disagree with me, right? So clearly, the sequential nature of the question is not something that was that is ideal, right? But I had no choice, right? I don't think there's a way to maintain integrity in an online exam otherwise. Okay. So then I asked them one more question saying, the exam was unproctored. Was it possible, which was possible given the nature of exam, unique and sequential questions? Compared to your experience with online proctored exams over video camera or otherwise, this unproctored exam was way more comfortable. Again, you can see a large fraction, 45 plus 35, either agree or strongly agree with me, right? Small fraction are neutral and a very small fraction disagree. Nobody strongly disagreed with me on this count, right? In terms of the comfort. Now, what I did was I also asked them saying, overall, how would you rate the end semester exam compared to other online exams, right? Because see, one mistake we make is we treat this offline exam as the benchmark and expect to get there even in the online mode. I think that's not possible, right? The online exam is suboptimal in some sense, but we have to maximize that suboptimality or minimize the suboptimality somehow, right? So that's why I asked them, are there other courses where other instructors able to come up with other kinds of exams that you thought were better? And again, here you see that 28% thought this was the best exam they have attended, 60% thought the exam was good, right? Very small fraction disagree or think it was the worst exam they have written, right? uh, Again, and then I asked them saying, can you tell me another exam that you thought was better than what I gave them? And most of them said no. They said one course allowed 3 days to solve the paper, but I don't know how they managed that with a take home. But really, there was, most of them thought this was the best exam they have written. So conclusion, it is possible to conduct exams without any supervision. Questions need to combine concepts. Don't ask simple questions. You cannot ask quadratic equation type of questions. Combine a quadratic equation with something else, right? And then ask a slightly longer question so that you can also give them time. You can give them like 1 hour, right? My question, I had 5 questions, right? And each, I had 4 questions that they had to solve. And each question was approximately something like 45 minutes to 1 hour that they could take to solve. Okay. And like I said, use Excel or MATLAB for parameter generation. You can generate a CSV in any manner you want. And then my script can take that into Moodle, right? Use LaTeX with Moodle package to take it into Moodle. Make the question sequential. Student performance suggests no malpractice, and student feedback was very supportive of this idea. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you. And I can take any questions that you may have.
Thanks for this very interesting talk, and I think it's very practical. You have very good ideas about timing, and I think something that we can probably consider in our online exams. Are there any questions from the audience? Anybody would like to ask? We have just a few minutes for questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Hugo, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations for your presentation. It's very interesting what you're doing, and definitely very, very useful. Something that many academics could use in our teaching practices. My question is about the marking. My understanding is that it's done in an automated form from Moodle, with that threshold, the 0.5 error. But for example, I teach maths courses where just the answer is not enough to mark. Normally, students make a very simple algebraic mistake, and that destroys the whole process, where probably their process and their understanding of their concept is correct. So I don't know if you have any ways of marking that. For example, just let me show you what we do here. We use a software called Numbers. I teach vector calculus and differential equations. And Numbers, it does the randomization of the variables. So also we set the threshold of a error for the answer. And then what we do is we have a series of scripts that actually show in MATLAB, and they print the whole solution step by step. So we just have an input variable, and then we have to mark manually based on that individual exam for the student, which is still, they say it takes a long time to mark, because every exam is individual. So we generate a new answer for every student. So I don't know if you have any ideas on what you do, or how can this be done in a better form, you know?
Yeah, so that's a very valid question, right? Especially if you're doing something like vector calculus and all that, right? So, okay, so I'll answer this in two ways. One is if you want to do it in an automated manner, right? If you want to still use Moodle, right? I would suggest you ask answers for certain subparts as well. You ask them, for example, what is the value of this integral, right? Or what is the value of the dive of this, right? And then you ask them step by step, you lead them to the answer. Okay, so it's not like all or nothing. So even if you look at, if you look at the feedback that if you look at what I showed here, you will see that the, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see that, it jumps in steps of, 2 marks, right? There is no mark at 4.5 or 6. That is because there are 4 parts to this. And 7.5 has been divided by 4. So the student can get a single part right and still get 2 marks. So student does get partial marks. So you see the small fraction here. These guys have got partial marks for what they did. Okay, but that is if you want to do it online. Like I said, right, I have also asked them to upload their detailed answer script. You can now manually go and correct with your TAs, go and correct that answer script if you want. And give them and override Moodle marks manually. There's no problem. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, definitely. It's
right. So this is just a way of keeping a timestamp, ensuring no discussion, and that's it. Now, grading you can do any which way you want.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any more questions? You can either write them in the chat or just ask us. Hugo did. I can just ask you a question, probably a quick one. So this is like really great idea about final exam, right? And you said that you have like 30%, right, of the final exam. Yeah, and correct. That's what you like do this like timing, which is I think really great. What about other 70%? I think you have a project, and also you have those like weekly quizzes. And you said that you just let them talk. Doesn't mean that for those quizzes, I think it's about 20% or something, 30%. So they can just like talk and like copy from each other, or is there like any other things that you implement, just to sort of like make sure that they actually like do their work and don't just copy from each other? Yeah, so here the weekly quiz, right? So what I do is the weekly quizzes are not just some easy quizzes, okay? I give them, some difficult questions. Typically what I do is my previous year's question papers, right? I give them in this year's tutorials. I just give them those questions so that it forces me to set new questions each time, right? So the students know the difficulty of questions that they're going to see. And if they know that if they're not up to it now, they're going to struggle in the end sem, and 30% means their grade is down by, easily by one grade or 2 they will lose if they screw up the 30% in the end.
So therefore, I am just relying on that deterrent. Because I think discussion is not a bad thing. In fact, if you look at it, right, in the online mode, one big thing that was missing was mutual discussion of students. Students learn about 25% of the content through discussions with their peers, because they are more approachable than a prof at times. Especially if a student is struggling, the student may open up to a friend much more than to a faculty, right? That is not something we want to stop entirely, but at the same time, it cannot be the only way of evaluating them.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for answer. Maybe just like last question, I'll just want to maybe, you said that you actually wanted to limit the access to the internet like less than 10 minutes, right? And then you have like 5 questions and 2 minutes each, right? Sort of like that. Do you think that will be enough time for them to answer the questions? What if they want to like think a little bit longer?
Yeah, that's a great question again. I did not talk about it because of time at that point, but the way I handled that was I had a detailed instruction document where I told the student, as soon as you click on that question and the question opens, please take a snapshot. Okay. And I have ensured that the entire questions appears in a single page. So it's not like you need to go multiple pages to get that question. Right? The figure and the question is available in one page. Just take a snapshot, then work offline for 40 minutes. Then come back to Moodle, because see, in Moodle, you can even close the browser and come back later. It will resume, time will keep counting, but it will allow you to open that quiz and enter the answer. So it would take about 30 seconds to open the question, take a snapshot, another 1 minute for you to enter the answers. That was the instruction that was given to all the students.
I see. Well, thanks for presentation. Thanks for your time. Oh, there's
Thank you. And it was a pleasure talking to you all.
Yeah, thanks a lot. There was just in the chat from Said, the question bank for individual assessment, individual. Yeah, you might find it interesting. Nice. There is something for that. Yeah. Also, you have very interesting and positive feedback from students. I think that's what we would like to hear, that actually like students accept this one and don't probably complain too much, and at the same time they actually study and learn. Thanks a lot, and thanks everybody for attending the session. We need to conclude it. I think we're already a little bit like past time. So thanks everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you all, and it was a pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks, Janakiraman. Bye.
Bye everyone.